Third down. Herbert looking.
There's the pump.
Johnston can't pull it in.
Oh boy, where do we start with this one? Quentin Johnston was just one of the marquee wide receivers in the 2023 NFL draft class, but one of the more peculiar cases. Aside from his physical anomalies like Tank Dell and Josh Downs, whose size held back their draft stock and was the focus of the debate, Johnston was a big, talented question mark coming into the NFL. His hands were a big concern, as well as his play style resembling a much smaller player than his 6'4" frame. Some saw this as a fatal flaw, but with the talent to be a true wide receiver 1, his status as a first rounder was undeniable. In my official mock draft, I had him going to the Ravens, where I saw Odell Beckham Jr. as a veteran mentor and Mark Andrews as the X receiver until Johnston was NFL ready. Although he was taken before the Ravens could, he still had a great landing spot. Mike Williams serves as the X receiver to be a big body on the offense for the Chargers, and Keenan Allen gives Johnston an even better mentor than OBJ could ever be. Such a cushy landing spot hasn't necessarily translated into NFL production yet. With Mike Williams falling to a season-ending injury in Week 3, Johnston has been given the opportunity to fill his role after some NFL development, and done anything but take advantage of it. In 10 games, Johnston has put up a hot 183 yards on 20 receptions and a single touchdown. His lack of development at the NFL level has left the Chargers fans wanting more, with some a little reactionary fans proclaiming him a bust already, especially after his Week 11 meltdown. A more rational approach is necessary, but it's extremely hard to look at Johnston as a talented receiver in a vacuum, as he was surrounded by young stars in the draft. The 2023 NFL Draft had plentiful wide receiver talent, and the results led in the Fantastic Four. The foursome of wide receivers taken from picks 20 to 23, all taken to great situations to make an impact early and develop into true threats. Johnston was the second of the four, talk about a middle child, and was taken before young stars Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. Johnston will always be connected to those two. The Chargers could have taken any wide receiver on the board but Jackson Smith and Jigba, but chose the TCU product, looking at the upside and potential to grow into a wide receiver 1 role. That obviously hasn't happened yet, and a quick look at the PFF grades of the Fantastic Four shows a clear distinction of Johnston from the group. JSN is limited in opportunity, but still lacking the immediate impact, and both Flowers and Addison found footing quickly in their big league roles and offenses. Adding insult to injury is the success of rookie wide receiver classes after round 1. 5th rounder Puka Nacua has outproduced everyone, and plenty of later round picks have flashed the potential this season. Nakua's dominance is followed by the quick emergence of Tank Dell in the Houston offense. And just looking at the rookie receiving leaderboard, Johnston is 22nd, even behind the underutilized running back Bijan Robinson. The Chargers are feeling that lack of production, and certainly didn't envision Bijan Robinson out-receiving their first rounder. Had Johnston been drafted to a smaller market, rebuilding team, his struggles wouldn't be so apparent. Johnston needs time to continue to develop. However, the Chargers don't have the time to spend. The Chargers have had an opening to be great, but unfortunately haven't taken advantage of it. This season has been primed for the Chargers to sneak into a deep playoff run. The Chiefs' stranglehold on the division is weak, as their offense really just hasn't found its footing without a good wide receiver 1. The Broncos, while hot right now, are still figuring out their identity, and the Raiders had Josh McDaniels for half a season. That alone should be the golden opportunity for the Chargers. But following their tragic loss to the Green Bay Packers, the Chargers are 4-6. Projecting out the rest of the season, the Chargers are looking at a 7-10 record, which is the worst season under Brandon Staley by far. Looking at the playoff picture, the Chargers are currently 13th in the AFC and have a desperate fight to climb back into contention. The Steelers and Browns spots are the most likely to be shaken up, but the Steelers always find a way to stay in the hunt, and the Browns defense may even pull off a miracle, which makes the AFC extremely complicated. The Bills in the hunt are also obviously a threat to contend, and the Broncos' renaissance gives the Chargers 4 truly formidable opponents to make it into the wildcard round. While there is a hope, the Chargers need to become a true contender right now to make the playoffs, and if the Chargers are going to make that jump, Johnston is going to have to play a clear role. The most notable issue in Johnston's game is his poor receiving, which came to a climax against the Packers. He has the body control to be a good receiver, but even when he makes a good reception, he often uses his body rather than his hands. Even Johnston's effort is suspect at times, and he can seem to move in slow motion. Even his route running is suspect as well, such as his deep routes relying on speed. He doesn't utilize speed changes or movements to be able to shake off his corner either, meaning it's just a race to the end of the route. Even when Johnston does whip out a good route, it's rare that he can get a target, as he's rarely the first read, and pressure often comes first. It's easy to write off Johnston due to receiving and effort issues, but schematics aren't helping his development either. He's often used on the backside of plays, which limits his opportunities to actually produce. Johnston has some struggles deep, as he relies a lot on his speed to beat coverage, but he's often the only receiver out for the safety to cover, keeping him blanketed without any conflict. Since Johnston has trouble creating separation, the modern solution is to get Johnston separated with motion at the snap, which Kellen Moore just doesn't do for him. The Dolphins have headlined this trend, getting Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle fully accelerated at the snap, which helped create space and stretch the defense. Until Johnston can effectively create his own space, putting him in motion could help boost his production and confidence. There's also a slight Herbert effect that keeps Johnston from the play at all. Herbert has a fixation on Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, which can be understandable but certainly impacts his other receivers. In this play, Johnston's running a rub concept to get Donald Parham open, which works, but Herbert ignores the rub entirely despite it being the better read because he predetermined he would target Allen. Herbert's a talented quarterback, but isn't helping the Quentin Johnston problem, or any offensive problem, by focusing too much on Keenan Allen. Johnston's route running and hands have been suspect, but the Chargers aren't doing the most they can to build on his strengths and protect his weaknesses, which is expected of a coordinator like Kellen Moore. The actual part of the Chargers' disappointing record is due to their defense. While the roster has a good defensive line, the promised schematic genius of Brandon Staley hasn't led to a good defense. The defense has struggled, to put it simply, and the secondary struggles have been the highlight of the disappointment. The defense is dead last in yards allowed, 12th in rushing yards allowed, 23rd in points per game, 8th in third down conversion percentage, and 9th in sack percentage. While those numbers aren't all terrible, Joey Bosa went down this week and is likely to land on the IR again, which will bring more optimism down from running and stack statistics. The defense simply can't keep the Chargers ahead, and thus lead the league in losses of 3 or less points, putting an unfair pressure on the offense to make plays. In fact, Quentin Johnston wouldn't have been in a position to drop the game-winning drive if the Chargers hadn't given up a touchdown through the air to Green Bay the drive before. The Chargers' defense is the root of their problems, but due to the defense's failures, pressure is put on the offense to cover those issues, and Johnston is a scapegoat for another poor game for the Chargers. The Chargers have certainly relied on their offensive power to win games, but those stars may be leaving soon, and Johnston's going to have to fill a lot of roles. The Chargers have already spent most of their time in the Super Bowl window fighting to even make the playoffs. With Herbert coming off his rookie deal and plenty of expiring contracts all around, the Chargers' money is tight. It's been accepted that the Chargers will have to divorce with one of their 2 star receivers, and it all comes down to money. Looking at their 2024 cap hits, the two combined for $67.2 million against the cap, which is over 25% of the total cap. The Chargers simply can't afford to hold on to both of the guys, and Johnston was seen as the heir to the wide receiver absence. Williams' torn ACL has acted as foreshadowing for the 2024 Chargers, and we've seen and covered that Johnston hasn't stepped up into the role predestined for him. Given the age of Keenan Allen and his smaller dead cap hit, you wouldn't be surprised to see the Chargers staple leave this offseason, and seeing that the league leader in receptions will leave means that there will be a significant gap open in the Chargers' offense. With Eckler's approaching free agency as well, the offense will look entirely different next year, and Johnston has to be able to step up and take these early struggles as a learning experience, since the Chargers really can't afford to see him flounder in the league any longer. If Johnston doesn't make progress toward the end of this season, the little remaining Charger money could have to address the loss of a star wide receiver and running back, which takes away from investing in the defense, and any money diverted from the defense is money wasted this offseason. Wide receivers this offseason will be extremely thin as well, as Mike Evans, Hollywood Brown, and Calvin Ridley headline an otherwise lackluster wide receiver class. The likelihood of the Chargers being able to grab a steal wide receiver are slim. And having to divert more draft capital toward wide receiver after the Johnston pick is a failure in and of itself. The Chargers need Quentin Johnston to step up. He's reached rock bottom, but he can only go up from here. Rock bottom is still salvageable for Johnston. His talent is still untapped, and Kellen Moore can help build Johnston into an NFL receiver through schematic advantages. Johnston has a lot of polishing to do, but his talent alone is necessary to get the Chargers back on track. Without his role in the offense, the Chargers won't be able to fight through the defensive struggles, and their fragile Super Bowl window will close.